Hey guys, I put together a little video on my basic workflow for how I edit photos in Photoshop. So I'll usually start an image by going through Camera Raw. I'll just kind of adjust the highlights and shadows. I'll usually pull the highlights down a little and the shadows up, just to kind of flatten out the image, get rid of any clipping if there's any. I'll do more extreme adjustments if the image needs to, but this one was quite well exposed, so I didn't do too much to it. Then from there I will do some liquify. In this instance I just kind of fixed the rib there. I felt like it was jutting out a bit too severely, so I just kind of flattened it in just to kind of not distract from the image. Then I'll do small little adjustments like fixing any squish, like if the clothing was a little bit too tight or whatever, then I'll just kind of smooth that out just to make everything look a little bit better put together. Then from there I just did little adjustments, like I just made it ear a little smaller just because I found it would look a bit better. I gave a tiny little bit of a smirk, and then I just kind of lifted up her eyebrow just to kind of give a nicer look and to make her look more awake. Like, you'll notice that there's a bit of blotchiness there, but don't worry too much about that, we'll fix the texture later on. Then I just went and pulled in the hair a little. It was doing some funny things there, so I just wanted to kind of round it out and make it look a little better. From here I just kind of cropped the image in a little, just to make everything look better. You'll see that I forgot to duplicate the bottom layer, so I just undid it, did a duplicate, and then just reapplied the liquify that I did before. Then the crop was just to kind of make the composition a little bit more dynamic. I wasn't quite happy with the composition of the image, so I just fixed that. Then from here I just kind of used the clone stamp tool just to take out that little bit of an imperfection that the liquify caused. Just kind of follow the shape of the hair to just fold that in. Then from here I went back to liquify just because I wasn't quite happy with the way that the hair was sitting, so I just pulled in the bangs a little, and then I just kind of fixed any other things that were still bothering me, just to kind of give the whole image a more rounded look, because it is like a high-end retouch after all, so you want everything to look perfect. And then from here I created a dodge and burn layer to do the skin retouching. You click in Alt while you create a new layer, set the mode to soft light and fill with soft light neutral color, which is a neutral grey. Then you set your brush to 100% with your flow 3%, and your background and foreground colors are black and white. Then what you do is you use the white to fill in any shadows and the black to fill in any highlights, and you just kind of paint over them to kind of make them disappear. Because of how low the flow of the brush is, it'll be very, very soft, and you'll be able to build up the color and get a very nice natural result. Obviously you'd want to use a tablet while you're doing this, because using a mouse or a trackpad would kind of just give you 100% opacity, because a mouse doesn't have pressure sensitivity. The harder you push, the more color you'll get, so just go in softly and just kind of fill it up until you're happy with how it looks like. What I'll do is I'll just kind of alternate between the black and the white to do the dodging and the burning. And you just kind of keep going until you're happy with your result. Like, ideally this is the best method for doing skin retouching, because you aren't destroying the texture of the skin at all. You're kind of just using highlights and shadows to kind of neutralize any imperfections instead of trying to take them away completely, which can destroy skin texture. But a lot of the time I'll actually use the two in conjunction. More often than not I'll only use frequency separation, but in this case I thought that using dodging and burning would be nice, because it is for print, so you still want the skin to look as natural as possible. This is a very long and tedious method, but the results are definitely worth it. As you'll see, I like to zoom in really close because it gives you a good view of the highlights and shadows, and you can really go in and fix small little details. I'll just go over an area at a time. In this case, I mostly just used it to fix the skin on her cheeks because she does have some acne scarring in that, so you do want to kind of smooth that out to give you a nice blank canvas to work on for when you do retouching, so you don't go overboard or over smooth the skin at the end of the day. Yeah, this is a very long process. I did speed it up to 2 times speed, so this in real time took about twice as long as what you're watching now. Yeah, like you'll see, it's already made a big difference, and a lot of those big pores have already completely disappeared. I'm not going too overboard because, like I said, I will be going back in with frequency separation later on to fix a lot of the issues. I just want to kind of give myself a little bit more of a blank canvas to work on to start with. You can also color pick some of the nice skin tones to neutralize any discolorations in the skin. Like you'll see, even after doing this, you'll still get a little bit of blotchiness. So doing this will really smooth out the skin texture. At this point, I was really happy with how the skin was looking, so I moved on to frequency separation. So what you do is you duplicate your background layer, and then on the bottom one you do Gaussian blur. You just kind of blur it to the point where most of the skin texture is gone, but you still have some detail in the rest of the face. And then for the texture layer, I will go to image, apply image, set it to subtract, and then you set the layer that you want it to go off. You'll see it says merged. You want to set it to background copy, or whichever layer that you applied your Gaussian blur to. Obviously in this case it's the background copy layer. And then from there your setting should be, your opacity should be 100%, your scale should be 2, and your offset should be 128. Then from here you want to set the blending mode of your layer to linear light, and you'll see if you take both off at the same time, it should be exactly the same as the background layer. It shouldn't add sharpness or take any away. Then from here I'll just go onto the color layer at the bottom, and I will just kind of use it to smooth out any more blotchiness that you come across, just to kind of, you know, make everything look good. That's such a bad explanation, but in a nutshell. Yeah, any bigger imperfections, any bigger blotches, like there was some glitter on her face, a couple of small little pimples and little scars or whatever, little dry patches. There was a mole that looked a bit funny to me, so I took that out as well. Yeah, you just kind of go in and fix anything else that needs to be fixed. I usually do this at either 20 or 40 opacity, just to kind of keep everything smooth, and you just keep going over it until it disappears. you'll find it's a lot easier to blend if your opacity is lower than, say, if you were to go at 100%. You'll notice there's a couple of weird white marks on your face now. That's from the dodge and burn layer, because obviously the texture isn't there at the moment, so it doesn't really know what it's supposed to do. So it may look a bit weird, but don't worry too much about that. Then just went back to the dodge and burn layer, and then just kind of fixed any areas that were now too bright from the frequency separation layer. And you just kind of go back and forth between the two until you're happy with the way that the skin looks. It's a very tedious process, but I promise it is worth it in the end. You can obviously just kind of see for yourself which you'd prefer. Yeah, you just keep going. Obviously you don't have to use the dodge and burn method, especially when you're in a bit more of a rush. Then the frequency separation is a lot better. If you're not using it for print and it's just for display on Facebook or whatever, then this really isn't necessary. This is just so that there's more detail in the final print. I'll speed through the rest of this process just to make it a bit more bearable. Like you see in this image, I was focusing a lot more on using dodge and burn to fix it than using the frequency separation. I use the frequency separation mostly just to kind of smooth out the skin texture and to get rid of any bigger imperfections and stuff that would have been a lot harder to fix with the dodge and burn, even though it is completely doable. The color layer just to fix the under eye area. You just take some color from, you pick color from just underneath it and you just kind of paint it in at 20% opacity. Most of this fixing I will do with 20%. It's just like the imperfections like pimples and that I'll use 40%. I think I got distracted by the TV. Now I'm just going in and just evening out the white on the sigil on her forehead. And now I'm going to go in because there was a bit of cracking on her lips, so I'm just filling that in just to make the color a little bit more even. I did also go in around the edges just to smooth that out, and then I went to all the other little marks, clean those up on the texture layer, just to get everything nice and smooth. And then I'll often kind of alternate between the texture and the color layer. And then here I just pick some color from above the eyebrow, just to fill in that blotchiness that we had. I'll sometimes put off the texture layer just to make it easier to see what's happening. So yeah, and everything looks nice and sweet now. And then I also did go back to the texture layer to add the texture back that was destroyed by the liquefy, because sometimes when you do some severe liquefying, it does mess it up. Then I just went back into the sigil and I tried to paint it out with the dodge and burn, but it wasn't really doing what I wanted to. So I did end up going back in with my texture layer of my frequency separation just to kind of fill it in. And I got distracted again. And again. Yeah, getting any spots that I missed. I'll just constantly go back and forth. Like, it's very easy to miss something. So don't be scared to just keep going until you're happy with the image. You see your skin already looks way better. Now what I'm doing is I'm just painting in some, like a solid color behind the area of the backdrop, because I'm going to fix that now. It just makes it a lot easier for when you're cutting out an existing background. So what I did was I just kind of roughly went over the area that I wanted to take out. Cut that out. Like you'll see, I just used the vector mask to paint it out. Then I'll just do the bulk of it, and then I'll zoom in and do a more accurate removal. I'll put it at like 70 to 80% and then just kind of paint it out gradually, because it does give a lot more of a smooth result at the end and it just looks nicer. Then I'll go and roughly take everything out, and then I'll go back and I'll just switch between the two, black and white, to just get that mask perfect and get that whole area out, because you don't want it there. Then from there I create a new layer. I color picked one of the lightest colors and one of the darkest colors to make a gradient. And then I set it to gradient, set my gradient to radial, and then I just kind of made a gradient behind it. You'll see I did a lot of takes over and over again until I was happy with the shape of the gradient coming from behind her. I do get it right eventually. Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. Then I just kind of played around with the opacity and that. Once your background color is in, you can go back and just kind of do any tweaks to the vector mask of the foreground, just so that everything looks seamless. You don't want it to look fake, you want it to blend in nicely, so take the time to just do this properly. Then I color picked up one of the colors of the fabric in the background, and I just painted over the background at 70% opacity. I set the blend mode to color, and then I just kind of played around with the opacity until I was happy with it. I felt like the little bit of the purple in the background did add a lot to the image instead of just being plain black and grey. I did go back and paint in a tiny bit of the texture of the background, and I did add a bit of curves over it just to kind of give it a bit more dimension, so it's not just a flat gradient and it looks a lot more natural. You don't want it to be completely flat, because then it can look very fake very quickly. Then I did also add in a bit of a highlight, so I did my curves for shadows and highlights. I'll explain the process when I do my curves later on, you can kind of understand what it does. just went back. You know, you just keep going back and forth. Take out, put back, take out, put back. Till you're happy with how it looks. Like here, I went over the fabric a bit too much, so I'm just going back in and giving it a little bit more definition. And just making sure everything is well blended and looks good. Background replacement is very tricky and you have to be as accurate as possible, otherwise it can end up looking very cut out. Like in this case, the color was very similar to the color of the backdrop before, so it was a lot easier of a task. I'm just checking my layers, making sure I'm happy with how everything looks. Then from here I'm gonna go ahead and do my dodging and burning. After checking a million more times. I like to check a lot just to make sure that I'm happy. What I did here as well is I did put everything from the background replacement into a folder so I could mess around with the opacity a little, just to let a little bit of those wrinkles come through, just to make it look more natural. You obviously want it to look smoother, but you don't want it to look overly smooth, so that does help make everything look just well put together. From here I started my dodging and burning. I start with my dodging. I'll use a curves layer for this. As you can see, I just kind of pull the middle of the curves 3 blocks up, and that gives a nice place to start. I also rotated the image clockwise so that her face was upright, which makes everything just a lot easier to work with. I just went back in to kind of smooth out the face paint, eyeliner, makeup stuff around her eyes, just to make it look rounder and just look a little bit more professional and neater and all of that. Yeah, and then from here I use my curves. I set my brush to 11% opacity and I paint in on white over a black background. And then I'm just kind of going in over any shiny bits on the fabric just to kind of bring them out, make them look more sparkly and more majestic. And also went in on the glittery parts on her skirt and then just added a little bit more brightness to those as well. It's a subtle difference, but it really does help the overall image a lot. As you can see, I keep switching the vector mask from black to white. I just push Command I and that inverts it. Then you can kind of get a better idea of where you want it. Then from here I went in on a face. Like I've said before, a good way to look at how to dodge and burn the face is to just Google one of those face makeup contouring charts and then just kind of see how you would do it for makeup, and then just kind of do the same thing but with dodge and burn. It just makes the makeup look a lot more like high fashion-y, and it just makes their features pop, which is always amazing. I usually highlight the eyebrows. I will brighten up the eyes to make them just pop more. Yeah, you kind of, what you want to do is you want to highlight areas that come forward, and you want to add shadows to areas that fall back. I'll also highlight any areas that are kind of too dark, just to kind of bring them back. And then I'll go to burn. To make the burn layer is pretty much exactly the same as the dodge layer. You, instead of pulling it 3 blocks up, you'll pull it 3 blocks down in the middle. Then I'm just kind of adding to the shadows. I'll go around the edges of like arms and legs especially, just to kind of, it makes them look skinnier. Not skinnier to say, but it kind of just gives it a bit more definition. And yeah, then I'll just go into areas where shadows were naturally falling, and then just kind of deepen them a little to give the image more contrast. If you get stuck, just keep switching between the two and see where the highlights look good. It does help a lot, like especially where you want to see where your cheek shadows and highlights should be, where you should brighten up your makeup, darken it. Like here I'm just darkening up our eyeliner, making it look nice and black. And all of this I do with 11%. You just kind of build it up until you're happy with it. I also like going around the outside of the eyes, the iris of the eyes, just because it gives that kind of like natural look, like it makes you look younger. And then I'll switch to a solid layer with pressure sensitivity just to brush in some eyelashes. On mine it is the 4th one from the top at the side of my brush panel. Then I'll just kind of brush those in. I'll usually brush those in with 30% just so they're a little bit darker. And then I'll just use that to kind of fold them in. Especially, it gives that nice false eyelash look and it makes everything look more glamorous. And I'm just darkening the pupils just so our eyes look a bit less creepy. And then because Diana has blue eyes, I'm just going in with a nice purple that I color picked from the background. I set the opacity to color, and then I'll just kind of keep painting over them until I'm happy with the color. A lot of the times I'll use a few different combinations of purples and blues and all of that in this case, just to kind of make it look more dynamic and a lot less flat. Like you'll see I'm painting the purple more towards the edges. Oh, and I messed up my brush palette, so I'm just trying to fix that. So then I'm just going in with the blue in the center, just to kind of give it a bit more depth. And then I'll go back in with like a pinkish purple around the edges, and you just keep doing that until you're happy with the color. It's a bit of trial and error, but it's worth it in the end. Then I just duplicate it to give it a bit more depth, and then I merge the 2 layers together. Then once I'm done, I'll rotate it back. Just do a final check, see if there's anywhere else I'd like to add any shadows, highlights. Like here I felt her leg was a bit flat, so I just added a bit more. Added a bit more to her back and her stomach and around the edges of her arms, just make everything more toned. Added a bit of contrast to the hair to make everything look good there. And then I just did the same with highlights, and just any areas I felt were still too dark, I just added a bit more highlights. Like it's a lot of back and forth, but it's better to do it little bits at a time than overdoing it and then having to go back to fix it later. You know, less is more in this case. And I got distracted again. Then I'm just doing a check against the original photo. What I do is when I'm done, I will use Control. You click in Control, Shift, Alt, E, and it'll make a new layer based on the current image that you see. And then I'm just kind of going back in with the Magic Hill brush and the cone stamp tool to get rid of any stray hairs, any imperfections that I'm not happy with. I did use this to fix the little stray hairs on her Alice band thing. just because it makes the whole image look a lot neater. Like, this is completely optional, but I prefer to do this. Like, it looks a little bit weird here, but don't worry about it. The contrast will wash out the detail on the Alice band, so it will not be noticeable at all. Then I felt her skin was a bit off colored, so I used the hue saturation tool. I set it to the reds, and then I just kind of desaturated them a little, just so she didn't look so red. For color balance, I just kind of wanted to add a bit more purples to it, and you just kind of use it to bring all the colors of the scene together. Like you'll see, I added some reds, I took out some yellows, and you just kind of go from highlights to shadows, and you just kind of pull them around until you're happy with what you see. Like here, I wasn't happy with the tone of the skin, so I just went back and redid it. And you just keep going. Don't be scared to do it in multiple layers. Like I said, rather do it slowly and build it up than trying to do it all in one go, because it's not always going to look the best. Like while I'm doing color correction, I could sometimes go up to like 5, 6, 7 different color balance layers before I'm happy with the result, and that's perfectly fine. I also added a bit more vibrance and a little bit of saturation just to make the colors of the image pop. I do love my colors being super bright, so that's just me. And then I went in and just brushed out some of the color in the skin, or all of it actually. I just set my brush to 100% and then just brush black over the skin on the vector mask just to kind of pull those out, because you just removed vibrance from the skin, so you don't want to bring it back with the vibrance and saturation. Because Diana is quite pale, so we do want to stick to that. See, like the image, I've taken out a lot of the red. I've added quite a bit of blue to the shadows, and it just makes the whole image come together. Then from here, I use my Annakapat Color Pro 4. I'm going to start a filter from scratch for this one. Then what I do is I just kind of go through them, and if something catches my eye, I'll use that, pull the opacity down, fiddle around with the layer until I'm happy with how it looks, and then just keep adding. Like here I'm using bleach bypass because I kind of like the grittiness and the contrast it gives the image. And then I just kind of keep going until I find something else that I like. Like I like the contrast color range, the way it affected the skin, so I did that. I think the layer I used after this was cross balance or cross processing, yes. And you can kind of just go through. There's a lot of options that you can use, so just kind of go through them. Don't be scared to experiment. When I started using this program, I think I could easily spend like 45 minutes to an hour working on a filter for one image. It's a really useful tool, and Google has luckily made this program free now, so I'd really suggest checking it out. It's also really nice for if you just want to do quick edits and you don't want to spend too much time on an image, because you can do a lot through this. Like you can do all of this through Facebook as well, through Photoshop as well, but this is just a lot quicker and it's in a list, so you can just kind of build up your filters. What's nice is you can save them as well, so it's really nice for batch processing to get the same effect across the board. Like also, what I almost always use is dark and light in the center, because it gives a nice like Vignette effect, Vignette, I don't know how to pronounce that word. But it gives a nice like Vignette effect to the image, and it's not as harsh as the actual Vignette filter would be. Also kind of like the way the photo stylizer changed the color of the purple, so I added a little bit of that just because I really liked what it did to the image. And then yeah, you just keep going. Go through all the filters. I'll usually go through the list, see what I like, and then just kind of go with that. Because luckily this is a filter program, so if you do something that you don't like, you can just go and take it away afterwards. You can go back and readjust and just kind of have fun with it. Yeah, I'm just kind of seeing which reflective effects I want to use, and I really like the way the soft gold made the details pop, so I did use a little bit of that, and then just pull down the opacity just so that the result was a lot more subtle. And I just went through the last of the filters. I don't think I used anything else, so you just remove that last one. And then while I was doing this, I did realize that I was clipping my highlights a bit, so I just kind of went back, put all the layers off, and then just kind of went through each one and see which ones were affecting the highlights, and you can kind of just go back and adjust for that. Like I found that the photo stylizer and the pro contrast was really affecting it. I like the photo stylizer, so I just took the pro contrast out. If things are a bit too hectic, I also didn't use the cross processing in the end. If the clipping is a bit hectic, what you can do is you can actually go back with your dodge and burn just to fix anything that you're not happy with, or you can use a vector mask to remove some areas or whatever you want. Like here I'm just using a highlights curve for contrast to just kind of pull down the highlights. It just kind of flattens everything out, as you can see. And then I'm just using this at about 30% opacity just to brush out some of the highlights that are a bit too intense, just to make everything look good. I keep saying good. But yeah, then you just kind of go back, fix anything you're not happy with, do some final touches, and that's about it. Like you see here, I just did a little bit of fix up on the arm. I felt like the highlight was too strong there. I took a little bit off of the ribs, off of her leg, off of her face a little bit, because it did make it very, very bright. Just keep going till you're happy, and then that's about it. I'll duplicate everything again, make it one solid layer once I'm happy with everything, and then from there you just save and you're done. I hope I was clear with everything. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, or if there's anything you didn't understand.